Welcome to episode number 13 of Hoop Talk Fanatics. I am here with my co host, Chris Cohen, and we have a ton to get to with college basketball ramping up, and we have a lot to get to. So let's start off with the news out of Rutgers with Ron Harper Jr. He was uh, the university released a statement Thursday saying that the injury was a non-shooting hand problem. He was undergoing tests and being evaluated, and his status is day to day. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on this for Rutgers, and do you think that this will be a problem going forward?
Doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue for them. It will suck because they're not going to be able to win at Purdue without him if he's out for that game. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be a tough game either way. But I think the main thing is now just getting healthy, get him healthy. If he needs to take off Sunday, fine. Even if he has missed another game, that's fine too. They're in a really good spot NCAA tournament wise. And 2 weeks ago, it looked like they didn't have a chance, honestly. And now they're almost a lock,
Hmm.
in all honesty. So they only really, I mean, obviously they still need to win a few more games, but if they play like they have, they should be able to take care of business and get a couple wins in the season, heading into the Big Ten tournament at least. So they're in a really good spot
Hmm.
in that regard. So it's just gonna be interesting. But I don't think it's a major issue. But I mean, he's kind of their go-to guy, so they're gonna need some other guys to step up in his absence, which they do have a couple options for that. But I don't think it's a long-term issue. But I I wish we could have had him healthy. Hopefully, he can play against Purdue on Sunday because
Hmm.
that'll be a great basketball game with how well Rutgers is playing. But long term, shouldn't be an issue. But hopefully, he doesn't miss more than a game or two.
Just looking at their schedule, they have this Sunday at Purdue, and then at Michigan on Wednesday, and then a big one on the following Saturday against 20-5 Wisconsin.
Yeah,
So
so they'll be tested.
I think that they will, if Ron Harper Jr. is good to go by next Saturday, I think they might have a chance to upset Wisconsin.
I do too. I think that's a very winnable game at home.
Yeah.
They've been playing great basketball. They beat Wisconsin on the road, so coming
Hmm.
home they would have a very good chance to get that done.
So moving forward, there's a ton of things to get to in the Big East Conference. Um, I'll start off with Villanova. Uh, they have been a huge problem in the Big East these past couple of games, and they have had really great chemistry throughout the past two games that they had, especially against a great Providence team. Uh, and I think that Khalid Daniels, Justin Moore, and Colin Gillespie and Eric Dixon is a huge threat to that team, and I think that Villanova has a championship caliber team with getting into March and with the conference tournament around the corner. And uh, the next two games is against Georgetown, and then a big one at Connecticut against UConn. So I think next Tuesday's game is going to be is going to have a big effect on what they will look like coming into March. What are your thoughts, Chris?
I agree. Yeah, that UConn team. I mean, they've been playing really good basketball too, and kind of that's a game that Villanova has to win if they want to
Hmm.
win the Big East regular season, in my opinion. Because I don't think Purdue's going to. Providence. I don't think they're going to lose much more. So Villanova they're gonna have to find a way to win that game on the road, I think. But even more than that, it's just gonna be a good test for them because UConn has some really good pieces that more than capable of winning that game. It'll probably
Hmm.
be it's a pretty even matchup. I mean UConn slightly, but they're at home, so they're gonna have that advantage for them. So I mean I'm super excited to see that game. there's a lot of different matchups to it that I really like. And Sonogo inside for UConn, I think could give Eric Dixon some trouble, and just some of
Mhm.
the different size that UConn has, even on in the wing a little bit in the forward spots. They have a couple different guys, and they score the ball really well. They have three guys who I see average more than 14 points per game, so they have a lot of guys who can beat you. Even and then they have a handful of guys below that big three that they have that can score the ball. I mean, Villanova's similar; they got their stars, but I feel like the other guys can step up when needed. And I feel like that's a normal thing for Villanova teams over the years under Jay Wright. They always have that guy step up who maybe even you don't expect to. So I mean that'll be an exciting matchup. Both these teams I think have the potential to go deep in the NCAA tournament. So I'm gonna be excited to see how they match up against each other in this game because the big they both have good guard play, and I'm still on the fence of how good I think Eric Dixon can be for this team this season heading into a tournament because he's going to go up against some dominant bigs, and he may struggle against the elite bigs, but this will be a good test for him for sure. Because I think Sanogo is definitely one of the better bigs in the Big East Conference. So that's probably the matchup I'm most looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, just looking at UConn's schedule, uh, Seton Hall almost knocked off them, but UConn won 70-65. What are your thoughts on Sonogo matching up with Eric Dixon in the paint? Um, and do you think that UConn is going to edge them by 2 or 3 points?
Yeah, I think Sanogo can do. I think Sanogo can do a little bit more than Dixon can.
Mm-hmm,
Dixon's really stepped up this season, but and they're not asking him to do too much either. Sanogo, they need Sanogo to carry the load a little bit more. Villanova doesn't need that because they have Gillespie more, and they have other guys on the perimeter who really can kind of lead the scoring. I mean, UConn had other guys too, but Sanogo just does a little bit more. But
mm-hmm.
defensively, I think Dixon is in a. I think he'll be decent at least, so it'll be a fun matchup. But I think Sonogo definitely has the edge, you would say. But I mean, Dixon has the skills and the ability, I think, to kind of keep him in check. And I think Villanova's guards can do a good job kind of really keeping pace or outscoring UConn's guards. And they should have the edge on Villanova should have the edge on the perimeter, at least slightly, I would say, especially when you got Colin Gillespie leading the way. But inside Sonogo, I'd probably give the edge to Sonogo, but it'd be interesting. But yeah, since UConn's at home, I'll probably pick them to win by a few points. But this is going to be a super close ball game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what that matchup will be next Tuesday at UConn. Um, there's also another team that's very interesting, which is Xavier. Uh, and I think that Paul Scruggs and Jack Nugi, Nungi, have been a uh, very good for that program this year. And what are your thoughts on their their schedule this season and going into the conference tournament next month?
So yeah, they've been a little bit up and down because they beat UConn, but then they lost at home to St. John's by 13, I think is what I just saw. So I
Mm-hmm,
mean they've kind of been a little bit inconsistent, but I mean they're still a good basketball team. And you kind of talked about Nungi, you got Scruggs, Fremantle. Like they have a good group of players, a bunch of really solid players. And I mean they have some good wins on their resume. So I mean they're in a good spot that wise. But I mean they still got they go to UConn, they go to Providence, they host Seton Hall. So, I mean, they still have some tough games coming up this next week and a half or so before you get into March. And then they have St. John's on the road and Georgetown at home. So, I mean, they're still going to be tested. I mean, you're tested almost every day in the Big East, honestly. So,
mm-hmm,
it's just a slugfest of a conference, just so many great teams. So, I mean, they're going to be it's going to be interesting to see how teams end the season because we all know you win in March based on it. All that matters is how good you're playing in March. And we're
mm-hmm.
still a month away from the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting hot at the right time. We talked about it with Rutgers already a little bit, even though they're different conference. They're starting to get hot. Can they keep this going for another month, or did they? Sometimes you say, did they peak too soon, or are they
Mm-hmm.
still gonna be able to play at this level for a whole another month and then end into the tournament? But I mean, that's not how these teams are thinking, but it's definitely a factor. it's just all about how you play at the end of the season. And I think Xavier's shown that they can be a really good team because they definitely have the pieces that we both talked about. So I'm excited to see how they perform. But yeah, especially you got UConn Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern, it looks like,
Hmm.
on Fox. So that'll be a great way to start college basketball Saturday for us because those are two really good teams who could honestly use some more wins and really because you want to get as high seeds possible in NCAA tournament. It's not about just making it there. Because if
Hmm.
you're only in that 7-8 line, it's really tough. But if you can sneak your way up into the 4-5-6 area, because which all these teams still could do by going on a little run, that would be so big to set up an easier path for yourself. But either way, we talked about it. Better seeds, nice, but you just got to get your team healthy and ready to go in the tournament. And I think Xavier is definitely one of those teams who has the pieces to at least win a couple games. Second weekend type team.
Uh, so, uh, so my next question is, what do you think about the Creighton team this year? They've been up and down, and as of now, they are not ranked in the top 25. Uh, I know they play DePaul tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. DePaul is 12-12 on the season, and I think that will be a very winnable game for Creighton. Um, and looking forward, Creighton has a big matchup against Marquette this Sunday, and I'm very interested to see who gets that win on Sunday. And what do you think about those two matchups?
No, I agree. I mean, DePaul's actually favored tonight by 2 points. So, I mean, it's not going to be an easy one for sure. But, I mean, Creighton's done a good job, especially because they've won 3 straight games. They beat Georgetown twice, and then Butler once at home in a close one. And that was so it's all you got to beat who's in front of you, and they've done that the past couple of weeks. They lost at Seton Hall big, but they won at UConn as well. So overall, it's been a pretty successful past couple of weeks because they've kind of been on the fence of NCAA tournament team, but now they've gotten a few wins. It's not great resume building wins, but you can't afford some of these losses either, which is just as important. So I mean, they're putting themselves in a good spot, and they have very winnable games coming up. On the road is always tough, but you got to find a way to beat teams you're better than no matter where it's played at. And they've done a good job with that. But I mean, overall, they've been much better this season than I expected. I mean, they have a lot of good pieces, but overall, I'm just excited to see how they can end the season because they have plenty of chances to improve their resume. Because they still have Marquette at home, and UConn and Seton Hall at home. So those are 3 good teams that really help build
Hmm.
their resume. And they also go to Providence, which isn't going to be easy, but that's a game they could get. This is a really solid basketball team inside and out that does a lot of different things to beat you. So I think Creighton's one of those teams. The Big East has a lot of teams that I guess are bubble teams, but most of them are trending the right direction of the bubble line, looking in the 8-9 seed range, which you could still drop out, but most of them are in a decent spot at least. Seton Hall's a little bit closer to the bubble than they'd like, but the top seven look to be in. Seton Hall could still drop out, and all those other teams, probably outside of UConn, Villanova, Providence, all at least still need to prove themselves a little bit more. But all these teams are in a good spot, and Creighton's one of those teams. They're 8-5 in conference, 16-8 overall, so they're in a really good spot. It's just all about getting better, and that starts with you got to take care of business against a DePaul team that you're better than, even though it's on the road. Find a way to win this game, and then you got a big one Sunday at home in front of the home crowd against a really good Marquette team. You gotta have guys step up, get that crowd behind you, find a way to win that game as well, and really put yourself in a good spot.
So let's see. So I think we all wrapped up on Big East talk. I know that we want to talk some Big 12 hoops. What were your thoughts on last night's Texas Tech Baylor game?
That was a very impressive win for Texas Tech. I expected Texas Tech to win, but Baylor may no longer be the second best team in the conference because they lost Jonathan. I need to go look at his name. I'm gonna mispronounce it so bad. Against Texas, he's out for the season. It's Jonathan Tachamwa Tachachoa or something like that. He's one of the best. He's one of the best bigs in the conference, and he just gives them a different element. So without him, they're in big trouble long term. And Aquino's been battling injuries. They have a lot of injuries. They've been injury ridden, and now it looks like Kansas is in a good spot to win the Big 12. But that Texas Tech is really good. Kevin O'Banner, we saw what he could do in the NCAA tournament last year at Oral Roberts. There's a lot of talk with Max A. Smith, but this dude was arguably better in the NCAA tournament than he was even. Like, he's a special pick and pop type big, and he's really gotten a lot better in some other area of his game. He's only averaging 2 points, 5 rebounds a game, but he's really kind of getting into his own defensively, helping out. And they just play a deep rotation, do a lot of different things. And then Bryson Williams, him and O'Banner, probably one of the best skilled big duos in the whole country, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
The way they can both score the ball. They combined for 40 against Texas. Bryson Williams dropped, I think, like 30 against Kansas. It was probably over 30 against Kansas when I was there. So we did a lot of different things well. I mean, both these teams are still really good, but Texas Tech is trending in the right direction. And I think Baylor's kind of trending away from being a title contender, in all honesty. And Texas Tech, they have the pieces, they have the depth to really do it. You never want to count out Baylor, a team like Baylor, because they just won it all last year. And they still have really good young talent, some good upperclassmen. But with the injuries they have, I'm a little skeptical that they can make this work, in all honesty.
So I know you're a big Jayhawks fan, Kansas, and they have a interesting matchup this Saturday against West Virginia. What are your thoughts on Ochai Agbaji going up against West Virginia? And do you think that they get the win at West Virginia?
West Virginia is always it's one of the toughest places to play in the conference. I mean, the Big 12 is full of tough places to play, and as a Big East fan, basically. But I would say these two conferences have the most competitive conferences top to bottom, and the home crowd advantages are just insane. I mean, all the power conferences and all across college basketball like that, but I'd say these two kind of stand out the most to me. And then like West Virginia, they're not great this season, and they're still a team that can make an NCAA tournament but they got to get some marquee wins, and they don't have them. They got to find a way to win some games. They still have Kansas, Texas, and TCU at home, so you got to win a couple of those, because they've just been trending in the wrong direction. They blew a game at K-State. They got blown out at Oklahoma State, and they lost against Texas Tech at home. They did blow out West Virginia. They blew out Iowa State. So, I mean, they're still in a decent spot moving forward, but a marquee win over Kansas this weekend would really catapult them into a much, much better situation to make an NCAA tournament berth. But I mean, their issues, they haven't been that good on either side of the basketball. And I don't think they have the pieces to kind of keep Kansas out of what they want to do offensively, getting to those spots, attacking the basket, getting to transition. I don't think they have the guy that can really take Ochai Agbaji out of the game either, like a couple other Big 12 teams have. So I do expect Kansas to win. But I mean, it should be somewhat close, maybe a 7-8 point win or something like that. Nothing crazy, because West Virginia is always a tough place to play, and they're going to battle. I mean, Bog Puggins seems to always get the most out of his players, even though kind of been a down year for them. But I mean, they still got time to turn around and make the NCAA tournament, so I expect them to put up a great fight.
Do you see Iowa State maybe being ranked in the top 25 before the NCAA tournament, or do you think that they are not as great as people think?
Iowa State's they've been a bad team in conference. On all honestly, I think they're still at the bottom. No, they're not. They're 4-9, so they're ahead of West Virginia right now. But they haven't been good. On all honesty, they just showed. I mean, they were a terrible team last year, so they're a lot better, and they're probably still going to be an NCAA tournament team because they have a lot of quad one wins on this, and especially against someone conference and then out of conference. But they just haven't been very good. In all honesty, they're just I wouldn't say disappointment, because I mean, this is kind of what we expected from them, but they kind of just overachieved in non-conference. But they're not a top 25 team. I'm not sure they're a team that can do much in the NCAA tournament either. But they still got to get a couple more wins to get there. But they're not a top 25 team anymore.
So moving on to the Pac-12, there's a very interesting game going on this Saturday. It's the Oregon Ducks against number 3 ranked Arizona. I know Arizona is a very intriguing squad to watch, and I don't know if Oregon has the capability to upset them this Saturday. So what are your thoughts on that game?
I mean, Oregon, they're a team that every year is playing their best basketball at the end of the season. Dan Allman always finds a way. So I think Oregon 100% can pull off this upset. I just, I'm just a little iffy if they have kind of what it takes. I mean, Richardson's good. They got Young, Harmon. Um, they have really good pieces. They have a really good roster, but I don't think they're quite on Arizona's level. But they have guys who have been into a tournament and contributed in NCAA tournament and won games. And like, this is the team that has the experience and the talent needed to beat the best teams in the country. And this is going to be a big test for them. They're still, I mean, they look like an NCAA tournament team, but they got to get there. And a win over Arizona Saturday would almost essentially punch their ticket, in my opinion. So they're going to be going all out for this, and this is a much more winnable game than people will give them credit for.
I think when it comes to the Pac-12 tournament, I think that Arizona is definitely the biggest threat of any other team in that conference, and I think they got the talent to go all out and win the conference. And I'm not sure about UCLA because they've been going up and down all season. And what are your thoughts on that squad? And do you think that they can overachieve what they have been doing?
I I don't. I'm out on UCLA. I don't think they're a title contender. I wasn't high on them coming into the season because what they did last NCAA tournament was special. But they're the reason they were only an 11 seed. Like they weren't good for a lot of last season, and just because they brought people back, they brought in some new pieces. I mean, they're a good basketball team right now, but that's not who they are. They're not that good. They're not as I mean, they've got to be some pieces who can be effective on both sides of the ball, but they overachieved on that run, which is you got to give them credit for. And that's what matters, finding a way to win an NCAA tournament. So I'm not going to completely count them out, but I don't think they're considered. I don't think they should be considered one of the elite teams in college basketball. And I always thought they were a tad bit overrated. But I mean, they still have a lot of talent, and they have guys who can create for themselves and make big time shots. And in big games, that's what matters most. You have guys who can get stops on defensive end and hit the tough shots, and they definitely have those. Using they have good defensive presences inside and on the perimeter. So I mean, they have the pieces. The pieces are there, but for some reason, haven't completely clicked coming in. I mean, it's still 75, not a full conference, so they're a great basketball team. It's just I'm not sure they have that next level to get back to a Final Four.
The Trojans are an interesting team to talk about because they've been on a roll. And what are your thoughts on that squad? And do you think that they are a much must watch in the conference?
They're a must watch because they beat my Kansas team into the tournament last year bad, and they brought back a lot of that team. Isaiah Mobley's a stud. They have good guard play, kind of good play all around, good solid play everywhere. Boogie Ellis is a good player, good win. You got Peterson. They got a handful of guys who can kind of get after it, and they just play good basketball. They impressed in the non-conference. I don't think they lost the non-conference game if I'm correct. And like they're 10-4 in conference, so like they're finding ways to win games, and they're beating some good teams. They've been very impressive, and they're definitely a sleeper team, I think, going into the NCAA tournament, assuming they keep playing. We're still a month away, but they have the pieces to win multiple games in the NCAA tournament and do a lot of damage.
Yeah, that once the Pac-12 tournament comes around, it's going to be very entertaining to watch, especially with some good high-level talent between USC, Arizona, UCLA, and some others. So just looking at this weekend's matchups, what are your most uh, what are the most games that you want to keep an eye on for this weekend?
For me, the big one is Illinois, Michigan State. Those are two teams that I really like how they've been playing. And I believe they both just took a recent loss, if I remember correctly. I know Michigan State did. Yeah, I know Illinois lost recently, somewhat at least. So I mean, both teams looking to really get back on track and get rolling again. And then Auburn at Florida is a sneaky one because that's a winnable game for Florida, and they really need it to kind of solidify themselves as an NCAA tournament team. Like you don't get these chances very often against top teams in the country, so they need to find a way to win that one, in my opinion. Let me look at Sunday slate real quick, actually. And then, oh yeah, Michigan at Wisconsin's another sneaky one for sure in that one. And also Providence at Butler. Butler's been playing really good basketball recently, so that they're not a slouch at all. I feel like they're getting healthier, and every team in the Big East needs to be concerned if when you have to go to Butler the rest of the season, because that's going to be tough, very tough to win. But then also Michigan, like they've been playing a little bit better basketball, and they had high hopes coming in the season. They've not succeeded. They have not reached. They haven't come close, but they're not all the way out. If you can find a way to beat Wisconsin on the road, get yourself rolling again. And they kind of got in rhythm a little bit, but they got to get a few more wins to give themselves a chance to make the NCAA tournament.
So I think that wraps up episode 13. And there was so much more to get to the next 2 to 3 episodes for sure. Once we know what happens to the seedings for the conference tournaments, and we will keep an eye out on what happens in the coming days. And I am definitely looking forward to this weekend's matchups as well as next week and the week after. It's going to be a very hectic ride to March, and I'm ready for everything that will happen.
Same, bro. It's going to be an exciting March. We got conference tournaments coming up soon, and then NCAA tournament. It's going to be a special month.
Yeah, for sure. So this has been episode number 13 of Hoop Talk Fanatics with myself and Chris Korn. And have fun watching basketball this weekend. And we are excited to talk more about it on the next episode.